The Hamilton Ticats are on their way back to their second straight Grey Cup after beating the Montreal Alouettes 40-24 in the Eastern Final on Sunday. I'm here with the Spec Steve Milton and Steve. Brandon Banks, 2 touchdowns, punt returns for touchdowns on Sunday. He was definitely the story.
There was an iconic sort of sense to what he did, Drew, and you were the first one to point it out to me, and I kind of resisted it at first when you said, this reminds me a little bit of Ozzy's kick. And you were 100% right, especially if you take a look at the second touchdown. There was 5 minutes left. Ticats had only scored 3 points instead of 7,
game.
and it was
it was a tight game.
You know, and the crowd was.
It was nervous.
Yeah, and you can really feel, as much as you can feel the insanity here. One thing I noticed today for the first time, you can feel the nervousness.
Yep.
Every time that Montreal scored, it was wah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just wah, it was kind of like at the same time. So not only the iconic nature of what Banks did, Drew, but the iconic nature of this place. Agreed. I mean, I've got a piece in the spec saying it's really too bad they have to shut it down for the winter. Yep. Because this thing is the antidote to SAD.
Yep.
It 7 victories here. Who would have predicted it? Who would have predicted that so quickly this thing would have turned into the biggest negative this city's seen in years to one of the biggest positives?
Ticats also played well on defense. They forced 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions from Crompton. It wasn't as stingy as they've been in previous games
because they didn't limit the run early.
Right. But it was enough to sort of contain
them. And they did what we always felt they had to do with Crompton, make him win the game with his arm. And if you look, he had some pretty good numbers there. But he also had he was 3 and 3, 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Now, if you were going into a game like this, and I want to flip this around to the Hamilton offense, and saying they're going to score 40 points, how many do you think they'll get on passes? Yeah. And you would have said 30. 0 points on passes for this team. I don't know that I've seen that when they put this kind of numbers together. That tells you a lot about the running game. It tells you about Grigsby, Madu too. It tells you about the growing confidence of the offensive line. But really, this team is still a defensive team. That's what everybody identifies with.
Let's talk a little bit about the offense. Right. Caleros with 199 yards passing, not a spectacular number by any stretch of the imagination. Again, Grigsby, second straight game against Montreal, 93 yards, and we've been talking about it all week, is the fact that the Ticats now have what is at least approximately a balanced offense, and that's enough to give Caleros the time.
Well, there's some stuff there, and I think you're going to see. We almost saw another thing from Speedy there. He couldn't quite get outside on it, Speedy being Banks, and that comes from Grigsby. And it comes from freezing those linebackers, freezing the inside tackles that they can't pinch in, and sometimes, because of Grigsby, the end won't square off as quickly. So I suspect we might see some success from that, what we call an end around, and he almost got outside on another one today, and Sinkfield too, and a lot of that you can relate to Grigsby. It also has a really great deal to do with the protection that Caleros seems to be getting a little more of, because the offensive line now, of course, isn't just backing up because the guys are coming at them. That they have to hold him, and you saw a couple times some of the offsides. I think part of that was caused by the balance offense. So yeah, it's coming around. I'm not saying that they're in great shape right now, but having Fantu's back just mentally helped. He didn't catch any passes, and most of the time he was a decoy out there. I don't think he made too many blocks even, but just having him and just having him as that, because Zach Caleros has been doing all this without sort of his go-to guy, which is he's not there. Well, I'll just throw it over here. There's Andy.
Yeah, well, and the go-to guy now I think is Luke Tasker. Again, 5 catches for 80 yards. He's certainly become the guy
and Darren Flutie in him with speed.
Yeah.
And that's no knock against Darren's. He wasn't a fast runner. The league wasn't anywhere near as fast as it now. But I mean, this guy's got speed and he's got heart, and he plays bigger than he is.
This will be the second straight Grey Cup appearance for the Hamilton Ticats, our second Grey Cup in a row as well. I certainly feel a little bit better prepared to deal with it, knowing what to expect. I wonder if the team feels a bit better knowing what to expect as well.
I think there's no way. I think there's no way they aren't. There was nobody that had been there sort of as a Ticat before. Some guys had been there that were on this team, but you can't sort of talk about your experience with another team. Now guys can talk about, and it's a fairly strong core. I think there's 6 starters back from D?
Yeah, there's over 20 guys,
that were
20,
here
25
before,
guys
and
that
maybe,
were on that team. Yeah,
and maybe a dozen or 13 starters,
and the
something
entire
like that.
coaching staff,
and
right?
the entire coaching staff, and that's a big thing. And having Medlock in perfect conditions with inside, having Caleros in perfect conditions inside. I mean, we have to remember that a lot of his problems, here, and he has no problems. He's 7-0, but in terms of sort of completions and those kinds of things, and that could have been better, and with the second down conversions and all that, part of it has to just do with the weather here.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I think seeing them inside, and they'll have a lot of time to practice inside too. They'll have 3 or 4 practices inside. So yeah, I think they'll be much better prepared. There's there's a whole bunch of talk about here, but this is the first. In the East, it's been such a crapshoot over the years that for 4 years we've had 4 different teams represent. This is the first time a team has won back-to-back East titles in I think since the Alouettes won that whole string, and that's 4 or 5 years now.
Make sure you check out Monday's Spectator for a full game report, and the Scratching Post blog is going to be a busy place over the next week as we lead into the 102nd Grey Cup. Reporting for Tim Hortons Field with the Spec Steve Milton, I'm Drew Edwards.